Arrival on the Deathworld. The transport ship hummed softly as it broke through the outer layer of Earth's atmosphere. Inside, a group of alien exchange students, each representing a different species from across the galaxy, stared at the viewport with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. The blue-green planet below looked serene, almost tranquil, as if it were an ideal place for a study abroad program. But the stories they had heard whispered among the stars painted a very different picture. Earth, the so-called Deathworld. Sivak, a tall, insectoid being from the Cerulean Empire, tapped one of his many legs on the metal floor nervously. "It doesn't look dangerous," he chirped. His multifaceted eyes flickered as he glanced at his peers, seeking reassurance. Beside him, Riller, a reptilian being with shimmering green scales, snorted derisively. "Looks can be deceiving," Riller hissed. "The Galactic Council didn't issue its warnings for no reason. I heard humans once survived an extinction-level asteroid. They didn't flee. They adapted." The rest of the group, 5 students from various species, muttered in agreement, their unease growing. Humans were the only species in the galaxy known to have evolved on a world classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, an environment so hostile that it was deemed nearly uninhabitable by galactic standards. As the ship landed smoothly in a sprawling field near a human university, the students disembarked, greeted by a delegation of human professors. Despite their earlier fears, the aliens were surprised by how small and soft the humans appeared. Unlike the towering Zrillians or the armored scales of the Dracons, humans looked vulnerable. Their smooth skin and lack of natural defenses stark in contrast to the ruggedness of the visitors. One of the professors, Dr. Elena Marquez, stepped forward with a warm smile. "Welcome to Earth. We're thrilled to have you here as part of the intergalactic exchange program. Over the next month, you'll learn about our planet, our culture, and our way of life." The aliens exchanged glances. Despite her welcoming demeanor, there was an undercurrent of confidence in her tone, as if she knew something they didn't. A warm welcome. The first few days passed without incident. The aliens toured human cities, marveled at their towering skyscrapers, and observed the bustling activity of the planet's inhabitants. Humans seemed strangely fragile yet thrived in environments that defied logic. The bustling streets of Tokyo, with their flashing lights and crowds, seemed overwhelming to this Cerulean, who preferred the quiet, sterile environments of his homeworld. "It's chaos," Sivak muttered as they navigated through the crowd. His antennae twitched incessantly, overwhelmed by the sensory overload. "Controlled chaos," corrected Dr. Marquez, who accompanied them. "Humans have a unique ability to adapt to almost any situation. It's part of what makes us who we are." The aliens noted the underlying pride in her voice. They filed the observation away as just another quirk of human arrogance. The first signs of trouble. On the 4th day, the group was taken to a remote nature reserve. What had been billed as a peaceful outing quickly turned into a wake-up call. The serene environment hid its dangers well. The students had barely stepped into the forest when a blood-curdling roar echoed through the trees. "What was that?" Riller hissed, his claws instinctively flexing. His tail lashed nervously behind him. "A bear," Dr. Marcus said nonchalantly. "Don't worry. They don't usually attack unless provoked." The group collectively froze as a massive grizzly bear lumbered into view. Its sheer size and power were unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. Despite the humans' reassurances, the students were certain they were about to meet their end. But then, to their astonishment, a lone human ranger approached the beast. Calmly and without fear, he waved his arms and yelled. The bear hesitated, snorted, and finally lumbered away. How did he do that?" gasped Sivak, his legs trembling. "Humans have evolved to handle situations like this," Dr. Marquez explained. "Our ancestors lived alongside predators for millennia. They learned how to coexist and even dominate in environments where survival seemed impossible." The aliens were silent, their earlier bravado beginning to waver. But culture of survival. As the days passed, The students began to notice more of these strange quirks. Humans were not the strongest, fastest, or even the smartest species they had encountered, but their ability to thrive in adverse conditions was unmatched. They watched as humans casually braved scorching deserts, freezing tundras, and stormy seas, often for leisure or sport. The group attended a lecture on human history, where they learned about Earth's many natural disasters. Earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, phenomena that would devastate other planets, were routine occurrences here. Yet, instead of fleeing, humans had developed technologies to predict, withstand, and recover from these events. How can a species survive on a planet like this? Sivak asked after the lecture, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. We don't just survive, Dr. Marks replied. We thrive. It's what makes us unique. The students began to understand why the Galactic Council had labeled Earth as a Deathworld. It wasn't just the planet itself that was dangerous. It was the creatures who called it home. Closing realizations. By the end of their first week, the alien students found themselves rethinking everything they had assumed about humans. The soft, seemingly fragile species was anything but weak. Their resilience was not just a product of their environment, but a defining trait that had allowed them to conquer challenges both on and beyond their planet. As they prepared for their next adventure, a deeper exploration of Earth's untamed wilderness, the students couldn't shake the feeling that they were only scratching the surface of what made humans so extraordinary. Little did they know, the real lessons about Earth's dangers and humanity's strengths were yet to come. Nature's ruthless playground. The sun hung low on the horizon as the alien students stood at the edge of Earth's vast wilderness. The shimmering outline of dense forests stretched endlessly before them, punctuated by jagged mountain peaks and sprawling rivers that wove like silver threads through the landscape. Despite the picturesque beauty, an unshakable tension filled the air. This is unnecessary, Riller grumbled, adjusting the strap of his environmental pack. We've seen enough of your cities. Why do we need to observe Earth's wilds firsthand? Dr. Elena Marquez gave a knowing smile as she gestured toward the trees. You won't understand Earth until you see how humans interact with nature. Our cities show you what we've built, but our wilds show you what we've endured. Sivak's multifaceted eyes scanned the surroundings cautiously. And survived, it seems. The group reluctantly followed Dr. Marquez deeper into the forest, accompanied by 2 human rangers. The alien students, despite their technological prowess and advanced environmental suits, couldn't suppress a lingering unease. Galactic societies rarely maintained wilderness zones. On their worlds, nature was either meticulously controlled or eradicated entirely. Earth's insistence on preserving such unpredictable environments puzzled them. The forest's silent challenge. The deeper they ventured, the more the forest seemed to come alive. Birds shrieked from the canopy, unseen creatures rustled in the undergrowth, and the distant howls of wolves echoed in the cool evening air. To the aliens, the sounds were not just exotic. They were unsettling. Are we safe here? Sivak asked, his antennae twitching nervously. As long as you respect the rules, one of the rangers replied with a grin. Stay on the path, avoid provoking wildlife, and keep your senses sharp. Nature doesn't forgive ignorance. The statement lingered, heavy with meaning. Moments later, the group stumbled upon a clearing, and the students were taken aback by what they saw. A large tree, its bark torn apart, bore the unmistakable marks of powerful claws. The gouges were deep, evidence of a recent encounter with one of the forest's apex predators. What did this? Riller's voice dropped to a whisper, as if afraid the beast was still nearby. Likely a bear, Dr. Mark said, her tone calm. Or perhaps a cougar marking its territory. Both roam these parts. You share this world with creatures capable of such destruction, yet you choose to live near them. Sivak's mandibles clicked anxiously. Coexistence is key, the professor replied, stepping closer to the tree. Humans learned long ago that survival means respecting the dangers around us. We don't dominate nature. We endure alongside it. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. In their societies, any threat to dominance was swiftly eliminated. The notion of tolerating such dangers seemed absurd. Predator and prey. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the group set up camp. The humans built a fire, explaining its use for warmth and protection. The aliens, however, found little comfort in the flickering light. What prevents predators from approaching the camp? Sivak asked, glancing nervously at the darkening forest. The fire helps, but ultimately, it's our understanding of the ecosystem, said the ranger. We know how to predict animal behavior, and that knowledge keeps us alive. Later that night, as the camp settled into uneasy silence, Riller stirred at the sound of distant footsteps. His eyes pierced the darkness, revealing the faint silhouette of a large animal moving between the trees. "It's watching us," he whispered to Sivak. Before panic could take hold, the ranger's calm voice cut through the tension. "It's a wolf. Let it observe. It's curious, not hostile." The wolf lingered on the edge of the firelight before silently retreating into the night. The alien students exhaled collectively, stunned by the humans' calm acceptance of such a close encounter. Lessons in endurance. The following day, the group embarked on a hike through more rugged terrain. The alien students, despite their superior physiology, struggled to keep pace with the humans. Each step revealed new trials, uneven paths, steep inclines, and unpredictable weather shifts. "This planet fights us at every turn," Sivak muttered, wiping away the condensation forming on his exoskeleton. "Why would anyone willingly endure this?" "Because Earth is not meant to be easy," Dr. Marks replied. "Every hardship has shaped us. The more we are challenged, the stronger we become." The students were left to contemplate this as they approached a glacial river. The icy waters rushed violently, barring their path. While the aliens hesitated, one of the rangers stepped forward, removed his boots, and waded across without hesitation. "You'll have to cross," the ranger said, shaking off the cold on the other side. "It's part of the experience." Riller narrowed his eyes. "This is madness. And yet, we do it because it prepares us for worse," Dr. Marcus added. With reluctance, the students followed. The water's frigid temperature bit into their limbs, but they pressed on, driven by an unfamiliar yet growing sense of admiration for their human counterparts, the unseen force of humanity. By the end of the journey, the students' perspectives had shifted. Earth was not just dangerous, it was relentless. The humans who thrived here were not simply lucky, they were forged by their environment. The final challenge came in the form of an unexpected storm. Heavy rain lashed the group as they sought shelter beneath the canopy. Despite the downpour, the humans began laughing and singing, finding joy in the adversity. Sivak watched in awe. "You celebrate this." "It's just rain," one of the rangers chuckled. "A little discomfort makes the comforts of life all the sweeter." For the first time, Sivak understood. Humans did not see Earth's hardships as obstacles. They saw them as opportunities to grow. As the storm passed and the sun pierced through the clouds, the alien students felt something stir within them. They had come to Earth expecting to observe a primitive species surviving against the odds. Instead, they found a civilization thriving because of them. Little did they know, the greatest revelations about humanity's strength were still to come. The survival games. The alien students stood at the edge of a sprawling canyon, gazing down at the strange gathering below. Hundreds of humans, clad in rugged outdoor gear, stood in clusters beneath fluttering banners. Enormous bonfires blazed, and holographic displays projected countdowns and lists of participant names. Sivak's mandibles clicked nervously. "What is this event exactly?" Dr. Marquez folded her arms, smiling as she looked down at the crowd. The survival games, a competition where humans voluntarily test their endurance, resourcefulness, and grit by navigating Earth's most unforgiving environments. Riller's tail lashed behind him. They willingly subject themselves to dangerous terrain and conditions for Entertainment. More than entertainment, Dr. Marks replied. It's tradition, a test of personal growth and resilience. These are the kinds of experiences that push humans to their limits and beyond. The aliens exchanged doubtful glances. As far as they were concerned, such reckless behavior defied logic. Yet, despite their reservations, there was no denying the underlying excitement rippling through the human crowd. The gathering storm. The students descended to the canyon floor, blending awkwardly with the groups of human participants. As they walked, they overheard competitors boasting about prior experiences, surviving snowstorms in the Arctic, scaling cliffs with minimal gear, and navigating deserts for days without supplies. Do all humans pursue such dangerous hobbies? Sivek asked a nearby competitor, a young woman who appeared to be in her mid-20s. She grinned and adjusted the straps on her backpack. It's not about danger. It's about the challenge. Pushing your limits out here makes everything else in life seem easier. Sivek mulled over her words, unconvinced. His species avoided unnecessary risk, valuing safety and certainty. The concept of voluntary hardship was alien to him in more ways than one. Into the wild. At sunrise, the event began. A loud horn echoed across the canyon, and hundreds of competitors surged forward, splitting into smaller groups. The alien students, escorted by Dr. Marquez, trailed behind, carefully observing the proceedings. The landscape grew harsher the further they ventured. Jagged cliffs loomed overhead, and thorny undergrowth made each step treacherous. Yet the humans pressed on, some even jogging ahead, as if the terrain were little more than an inconvenience. Sivek stopped at the base of a towering rock face. How do they move so quickly through this? Humans are designed for endurance, Dr. Mark said, pointing to a group scaling the rocks ahead. We might not be the fastest or the strongest, but our bodies can sustain effort for longer periods than most species, and when the body fails, the mind carries us forward. Riller watched as one man stumbled, cutting his arm against a sharp outcrop. Rather than retreat, the man wrapped the wound and continued climbing. Incredible. Riller murmured, on my world, such an injury would warrant immediate withdrawal. Humans don't stop for minor setbacks, Dr. Marks replied. Pain is just another obstacle. The first trial. Hours into the games, the students witnessed their first true test of Earth's brutality. A sudden temperature drop brought biting winds and flurries of snow cascading down from the mountains. The path ahead grew slick with ice, forcing competitors to adapt. Rather than halt the competition, the humans pressed on, bundling themselves in heavy coats and constructing makeshift shelters from nearby materials. Sivek observed a group of humans assembling tents in the snow. Their ability to respond to environmental shifts is remarkable. It's necessity, Dr. Marcus said. On Earth, nature doesn't wait for you to be ready. You either adapt or you perish. The aliens quietly took shelter under the Rangers' watchful eyes, but as they watched the humans endure the storm, a question lingered in their minds. What kind of world breeds a species so unrelenting in its pursuit of survival? A dangerous encounter. As the blizzard passed and the sun re-emerged, the group pressed further into the wilderness. It was then that they encountered the first sign of Earth's deadlier inhabitants. A distant growl echoed through the trees, freezing the students in place. Riller's scales bristled. That sound. It's not human. No, Dr. Marquez confirmed. It's a mountain lion. Sivek scanned the surrounding area nervously. And what do we do in the face of such a threat? Dr. Marquez didn't seem concerned. We keep walking. The lion won't attack unless provoked. Despite her confidence, the alien students remained on edge. The idea of sharing space with apex predators was incomprehensible. On their worlds, dangerous wildlife was kept far from populated areas, if not eradicated altogether. True to her word, the mountain lion observed from a distance, but made no move to approach. It respects your dominance, Sivek noted. No, Dr. Marquez corrected. It simply sees no need to engage. Predators understand balance. We're part of that balance here. Pushing beyond limits. As night fell, the students watched in disbelief as competitors continued hiking by torchlight, driven to reach the next checkpoint. Some lagged behind, clearly exhausted, but their teammates refused to leave them behind. Sci-Fi approached one of the stragglers, a man covered in mud, his face streaked with sweat. "Why do you continue when your body resists?" The man smiled weakly. "Because I can, and because giving up isn't in our nature." Those words lingered with Sci-Fi. The final push. By the end of the competition, fewer than half of the participants completed the full course. Those who did crossed the finish line to cheers and applause, not just from fellow competitors, but from the alien observers who had begun the journey with skepticism and left with something far different: respect. In the days that followed, the alien students reflected on the experience. The survival games were more than a test of strength. They were a glimpse into the very essence of humanity. Humans didn't just endure the harshness of their world. They thrived in it, shaped by its trials, and grew stronger with every hardship. As they boarded their transport ship, Sci-Fi turned back to gaze at the sprawling wilderness one last time. This planet, this species, it defies reason. Dr. Marquez chuckled softly. "That's Earth for you, and that's humanity." Little did the students realize, the greatest test of their understanding was still ahead. Humanity's greatest weapon, unity. The storm had passed, leaving behind a landscape transformed. The canyon, once a stark expanse of jagged rock and dry riverbeds, now shimmered with moisture. Pools of rainwater reflected the sunlight, and the scent of damp earth hung in the air. The alien students, still shaken from their first encounter with Earth's wild temperament, trudged behind Dr. Marquez as they made their way toward the next checkpoint. Sci-Fi's legs ached from the previous day's hike, and Riller's scales were still slick from the snowmelt. Even with their advanced physiology and environmental suits, the journey had taken its toll. But as they approached the sprawling encampment ahead, a curious sight greeted them. Hundreds of humans, battered and exhausted from the survival games, had gathered in a communal circle. Some were patching torn gear, others shared food and water, and a few were administering medical aid to those with minor injuries. Laughter echoed through the air, as if the trials they had just endured were little more than a distant memory. Sci-Fi's mandibles twitched in confusion. They should be resting, recovering. Why are they celebrating? Dr. Marquez slowed her pace, observing the scene with a soft smile. Because they survived. And they didn't do it alone. Strength in numbers. As the alien students entered the camp, they were immediately enveloped by the atmosphere. Competitors who had never met before were sharing stories and exchanging supplies. A man with a heavily bandaged arm was helping another participant reinforce a shelter, while a young woman distributed emergency rations from her pack to those who had run out. Riller's tail flicked uncomfortably. On Dracon, weakness is a mark of shame. The injured are left behind to ensure the strong continue forward. But here, they treat vulnerability as if it's a badge of honor. "It is," Dr. Marks replied. "Humans believe that strength isn't measured by individual ability, but by how well we support each other. We rise together, or not at all." Sci-Fi watched as one human offered his coat to another shivering competitor. So this, unity, is a survival strategy. Marquez's eyes glimmered. It's more than that. It's our greatest weapon. A power of shared burdens. Later that evening, the alien students joined a circle of humans gathered around a roaring bonfire. The heat from the flames chased away the lingering cold, and stories began to flow freely. A man with weathered skin, likely in his late 60s, recounted tales from previous survival games. Despite his age, he spoke with vigor and pride, his words earning nods and cheers from those around him. "You see," the man said, addressing the group, "it's not about who crosses the finish line first. It's about who you help along the way." A younger competitor chimed in. Last year, my team was stranded in the desert when our water supply ran out. Another group found us and split their rations. We all made it to the end together. Sci-Fi's antennae twitched. But that means fewer resources for the rescuers. Why risk diminishing your own chances? The older man chuckled. Because no one wants to stand alone at the top. When you reach the summit, it's far better to look around and see familiar faces than to stare into emptiness. Riller pondered the statement, his reptilian mind struggling to grasp the depth of it. A test of trust. The following morning, the group faced the next leg of the journey, crossing the ravine that bisected the canyon floor. The only path forward was a rickety rope bridge that swayed with every gust of wind. The alien students hesitated at the edge. Sivak, despite his many limbs, found no comfort in the thought of navigating the unstable structure. One of the human competitors, noticing their hesitation, stepped forward. "I'll go first. If it holds for me, it'll hold for you." Sivak's eyes widened. "You would test it on our behalf." "Of course," the man said with a shrug. "We all cross together, or none of us do." The alien students watched in stunned silence as the human carefully made his way across, calling back reassurances with every step. When he reached the other side unharmed, the rest of the group followed, placing their trust in his footsteps. By the time Sivak set foot on solid ground again, something had shifted within him. "They trust each other without question," he murmured. Dr. Marcus nodded. "It's trust that's been earned over centuries. Humans learned long ago that survival is a shared endeavor." The trials of crisis. As the journey continued, the alien students faced another lesson in human unity, this time under far more dangerous circumstances. Midway through their trek, a sudden landslide thundered down the mountainside. Rocks and debris cascaded toward the group, forcing them to scatter. In the aftermath, several humans were trapped beneath the rubble. Without hesitation, the remaining competitors sprang into action, digging through the debris with their bare hands. The alien students watched in shock as the humans worked together, risking their own safety to free those buried beneath. Riller's voice trembled. "They endanger themselves for the sake of others, even when the threat persists." "It's instinct," Marcus replied. "In moments of crisis, humans don't abandon each other. We run toward danger, not away from it." As the last trapped competitor was pulled free, a collective cheer erupted from the group. The aliens, still reeling from the chaos, realized they had witnessed something profound, an act of unity that transcended logic or self-preservation, the fabric of humanity. That night, Sivak sat alone by the fire, staring into the flames. Riller approached, his scales reflecting the flickering light. "Does it unsettle you?" Riller asked quietly. Sivak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. "No, it humbles me. I came to Earth believing humans thrived in spite of their weaknesses. But now I see that their greatest strength is rooted in those very weaknesses. They uplift one another," Riller agreed. "It's unlike anything we've seen before." As the stars glittered overhead, the alien students found themselves reflecting not on humanity's technological advancements or physical endurance, but on something far more enduring, the unbreakable bonds that bound them together. Little did they know, the challenges ahead would test that unity to its limits. The forgotten mornings. The alien students stood in the shadow of a sprawling human military installation, their eyes tracing the imposing silhouette of towering machines and fortifications. Unlike the wilderness they had traversed, this place was rigid, calculated, and unforgiving. The air hummed with the low vibration of unseen machinery, and the distant echo of drills and weapons testing rang out across the vast expanse. Sivak's gaze lingered on a line of armored vehicles that rumbled by. Their thick plating and weapon mounts spoke of a different side of humanity, one not defined by unity and compassion, but by precision and force. "Is this necessary?" Riller's voice was edged with unease. His reptilian scales twitched at the sight of the turrets that lined the perimeter. "After witnessing your world's cooperation, this feels contradictory." Dr. Marquez's expression softened, but her eyes remained distant as she watched a squad of soldiers march in formation. You've seen humanity's compassion. Now you'll witness our resolve. A human officer approached, saluting sharply before addressing Dr. Marquez. Ma'am, the demonstration is ready. We'll begin momentarily. Marquez gestured for the students to follow. This is a critical part of your education about Earth. We may strive for peace, but we do not shy away from conflict when necessary. A weaponized species. The group gathered atop a raised observation platform overlooking an expansive testing ground. Rows of steel targets stretched far into the distance. Riller's eyes narrowed as massive artillery units were brought into position, their barrels aimed toward the farthest targets. Smaller drones hovered overhead, transmitting data to a nearby command station. What exactly are we observing? Sivak asked cautiously. Dr. Marquez's voice was calm but carried a weight of significance. The Galactic Council issued warnings about Earth, but they weren't just referring to our ecosystems. They were referring to us. As if on cue, a voice over the intercom signaled the beginning of the demonstration. In a thunderous eruption, the artillery units opened fire. Explosions rippled across the landscape, reducing distant steel targets to molten slag within seconds. The alien students flinched, the sheer power of the display vibrating through their bodies. Even Riller, who prided himself on his homeworld's advanced weapons, found his scales bristling. Sivak's antennae twitched as he leaned forward. I've seen orbital cannons with less destructive force. How are these ground-based weapons so effective? One word, Marcus said, her gaze fixed on the smoking remains. Efficiency. The engineers of war. As the demonstration continued, the students were led through the inner workings of the facility. Engineers worked alongside scientists, calibrating weapons that pulsed with energy and rifles designed to function in any environment, from sub-zero tundras to the burning heat of deserts. The alien students observed as prototypes of exosuits were fitted onto soldiers, enhancing their strength tenfold. In the testing bay, a soldier lifted a boulder that even Riller doubted he could move without assistance. It's not just the technology, Dr. Marquez explained as she guided them. It's the mentality behind it. Humans learned early that survival isn't guaranteed. We created tools not just to hunt, but to defend, to adapt, and to conquer any threat, whether it comes from Earth or beyond. Sivak's eyes lingered on the blueprints scattered across the engineers' workstations. Some depicted large starships armed with weapons that dwarfed the artillery they had just witnessed. Others hinted at planetary defenses capable of intercepting objects hurtling through space. Riller tapped the edge of one of the designs. You build not out of fear, but preparation. Exactly, Marcus replied. We prepare for the worst, even in times of peace. Lessons carved in blood. As the tour progressed, the students were led to a dimly lit hall lined with holographic displays. Each projection depicted famous battles from humanity's long and often violent history. From ancient wars fought with swords and spears to interstellar conflicts that had erupted after humanity first expanded into space, the room bore silent witness to the cost of survival. Riller paused in front of one projection, watching as footage of human soldiers locked in fierce urban combat flickered before him. Your history is violent, and yet you endure. Dr. Marquez's expression darkened. It's true. We've made mistakes, and countless lives have been lost. But every scar, every battle, has taught us something. We evolve with every conflict. Sivak stopped at a hologram depicting Earth's reconstruction after a devastating war. Cities rebuilt from ruins, entire populations relocating to forge new futures. And yet, you rebuild. Always. Marquez nodded. Resilience isn't just about enduring hardship. It's about rising from the ashes, stronger than before. The forgotten mornings. By the time the tour ended, the alien students stood on the observation deck overlooking Earth's sprawling cities. The contrast between the bustling metropolis and the military installation behind them spoke volumes. Now you understand why the Galactic Council warned against interference with Earth, Marcus said softly. We are a species that will extend a hand in friendship, but if threatened, we will not hesitate to defend ourselves. Riller's tail flicked uneasily. It's rare to find a species that balances compassion with such ruthless efficiency. That balance is what defines us, Marx replied, and it's what keeps us alive. As they prepared to leave the facility, Sci-Fi couldn't shake the feeling that Earth's greatest secret wasn't its wiles, its predators, or even its weapons. It was the spirit of the people, the unwavering belief that no matter the odds, humanity would always find a way to endure. Little did the students know, their lessons on Earth were far from over. The true test of their understanding would come when they faced humanity's unbreakable resolve firsthand. First-hand experience. The wind howled like a living creature as the alien students huddled inside the reinforced walls of an outpost high in the Carpathian Mountains. A blizzard raged outside, its icy tendrils lashing against the structure with unrelenting force. The heavy stone walls groaned under the weight of snow piling against them. Riller's tail coiled tightly around his legs, his scales pressed flat against his body to preserve warmth. Sivak's antennae drooped under the weight of moisture accumulating in the humid air, and the other students fared no better. Even their advanced environmental suits struggled against Earth's mercurial elements. This is madness, Riller hissed, his claws digging into the wooden floor for stability. No species should willingly subject themselves to such conditions. Dr. Marcus sat near the hearth, adding another log to the fire, as if the blizzard was little more than a mild inconvenience. Humans have lived in worse, she said casually, her face illuminated by the flickering flames. You're fortunate, this isn't midwinter. The temperatures can plummet far lower. Sivak's mandibles clicked in disbelief. This planet truly seeks to eliminate you at every opportunity. Marquez's eyes glinted with amusement. Perhaps. But if Earth sought to destroy us, it would have succeeded long ago. An unplanned disaster. As the storm wore on, the outpost shuddered. The flickering lights overhead dimmed for a moment before stabilizing. A distant rumble echoed through the mountains, followed by a low vibration that hummed beneath their feet. What was that? Riller straightened, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the room. Dr. Marquez frowned, placing a hand on the wall. Avalanche. The alien students stiffened. Before they could react, the door to the outpost burst open, admitting a gust of icy wind and a figure bundled in thick, fur-lined clothing. The human ranger, frost clinging to his beard, stomped the snow from his boots. We have a problem, the ranger announced. A smaller outpost to the east was hit by the avalanche. Several people are trapped. They sent a distress signal, but communication cut off shortly after. Dr. Marquez rose immediately, grabbing a heavy coat from the wall. How many are stranded? 5, including 2 civilians, the ranger replied grimly. Sivak's eyes widened. Surely you don't mean to venture out in this weather. We don't have a choice, Marcus said, fastening her coat. The outpost is remote. If we wait for the storm to pass, they won't survive. Riller stepped forward, his scales rattling in protest. This is not logical. You would risk your lives for 5 individuals. Marx met his gaze without hesitation. Yes. Sivak and Riller exchanged uneasy glances, struggling to comprehend the weight behind her answer. Into the blizzard, bundled in borrowed human gear, the alien students trudged alongside Dr. Marquez and the ranger into the blinding snow. The environment was hostile in ways that defied galactic norms. Every breath stung their lungs, and each step felt like dragging their limbs through quicksand. Yet the humans pressed on, unrelenting. Marquez carried a heavy pack loaded with supplies, her pace unwavering. The ranger led the way, navigating by instinct alone as visibility dwindled to mere feet. How do you persist? Sivak gasped, his exoskeleton growing stiff in the cold. This storm should have driven you to shelter. Marquez adjusted the strap of her pack, her breath visible in the frigid air. Because survival isn't a choice. It's a responsibility. The moment we abandon others to save ourselves is the moment humanity loses what makes it strong. The alien students fell silent, reflecting on the strange paradox. In their cultures, preservation of the fittest dictated survival. Here, survival meant risking everything for the weakest. The rescue. Hours later, they arrived at the buried outpost. Snowdrifts covered most of the structure, with only the tip of the antenna visible. Without hesitation, the humans began digging with shovels and bare hands. Sci-Fi hesitated. Surely there must be machinery for this. No time, Marx replied, her hands already raw from the cold. Humans learned long ago that sometimes you can't wait for the perfect tool. You become the tool. One by one, the alien students joined the effort, clawing at the snow alongside their human counterparts. It was grueling work, but inch by inch, the outpost was uncovered. A faint tapping sound echoed from beneath the snow. Someone inside was alive. The aliens watched in awe as Marquez pressed her ear to the structure. "We hear you. Hold on." A surge of energy passed through the group. The pace of digging doubled, driven by the simple realization that hope lay just beneath their fingertips. The weight of sacrifice. When the entrance was finally unearthed, the trapped survivors stumbled out, 2 of them carried by their companions. Frost clung to their faces, but their eyes gleamed with gratitude. One of the survivors, a woman wrapped in tattered blankets, grasped Marquez's hand. "I thought no one would come," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We always come," Marquez replied, wrapping her coat around the woman. As they trekked back to the safety of the outpost, the aliens walked in silence, burdened by thoughts they could not voice. A new understanding. Back at the outpost, the rescued survivors sat around the fire, eating and warming their hands. Riller's scales shimmered in the glow as he approached Dr. Marquez. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice quiet. "I believe humans reckless, but now I see that your strength lies not in defiance, but in unwavering loyalty to one another." Marquez smiled faintly. "That's the heart of who we are. Alone, we're fragile. But together, we're unstoppable." Sci-Fi's antennae twitched. "I don't know if our species could ever live like this. To carry each other's burdens so willingly." Marquez glanced at the fire, the light dancing in her eyes. "Maybe not, but that's what makes Earth, and humanity, different." As the storm faded and the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, the alien students understood. Earth wasn't a death world because of its dangers. It was a death world because it forged people who refused to break, no matter the odds. Return and revelation. The transport ship soared above Earth's atmosphere, cutting through the black expanse of space as it prepared to dock with the waiting Galactic Council cruiser. Below, Earth's curvature glowed softly, the swirling blues and greens deceptively serene from orbit. Savak sat by the observation window, his multifaceted eyes reflecting the vast planet below. Though the blizzard had long passed, the memory of the rescue mission lingered heavily in his thoughts. Riller, standing beside him, was silent, a rare state for the normally brash Dracon. Neither spoke as the familiar voice of Dr. Marquez echoed behind them. "You're quiet," she said, settling into a seat across from them. "I expected more questions." Sivak's antennae twitched. "There are no more questions," he replied softly. "Only answers we weren't prepared for." Marquez smiled knowingly. "I figured as much. Earth has a way of revealing truths people aren't ready to face." The Council's inquiry. Upon docking, the alien students were escorted into the Galactic Council chamber, a sprawling crystalline room bustling with representatives from countless worlds. The air buzzed with hushed conversations as the students approached the central platform where the council members awaited. Councillor Dralvik, a towering figure from the Iskari Dominion, leaned forward with curiosity. His translucent skin shimmered under the overhead lights. "You have completed your time on Earth," he said. "We await your report." Sivak stepped forward hesitantly, casting a brief glance at Riller before speaking. Earth defies expectations. A murmur rippled through the chamber. Counselor Dralvik raised an eyebrow. Clarify. Riller took a step beside Sivak, his tone firmer. The warnings were not exaggerated, Counselor. Earth is dangerous. Its climate, its creatures, and its people. But the danger isn't why humans thrive. It's their nature to embrace adversity, to face it not as individuals, but as a collective force. We witnessed this firsthand. Another counselor, a feathered being from the Avloran consortium, tilted her head. Collective force. Are you suggesting their strength lies in cooperation? Marquez, who stood silently behind the students, chose that moment to interject. That's exactly what they mean. The unseen power of humanity. Sivak cleared his throat and continued. I saw humans risk their lives not for personal gain, but to save others, strangers. They placed the survival of the weakest above their own well-being. No species I know of acts this way on instinct. Riller's tail flicked as he added, their unity makes them dangerous. They innovate together, they suffer together. And when threatened, they stand together. Counselor Dralvik leaned back, his expression contemplative. Fascinating, yet it raises a concern. Such unity could lead to unchecked expansion or dominance. Marquez's eyes narrowed. That's not who we are. Humans don't expand to conquer. We expand to survive. You've seen our world. It doesn't offer comfort. It forges resilience. Dralvik nodded slowly. So the rumors are true. Humanity thrives because Earth refuses to coddle them. Sivak took a step forward, voice steady. Counselor, I believe the warnings about Earth missed the true danger. The chamber fell silent. The danger, Sivak continued, is not that humanity seeks conflict. It is that, when the time comes, they will meet conflict with a unity the galaxy is not prepared to face. A species that refuses to abandon each other, no matter the odds, is not one to underestimate. A shift in perception. For a long moment, the council chamber remained still, digesting the weight of Sivak's words. Finally, Dralvik spoke. Earth will remain classified as a Deathworld under Galactic protocol, not because of its harsh environment, but because of the beings who call it home. Sivak's antennae flicked with approval. Riller crossed his arms, his tone light but laced with respect. A Deathworld, by choice, not circumstance. Marquez smiled faintly. We don't choose to live on Earth because it's easy. We choose to live there because it shapes who we are. And that's not something we're willing to give up. Parting lessons. As the council session adjourned, Sivak lingered by the chamber's exit, gazing out at the vast starscape beyond. Riller approached, his usual smirk absent. You think they'll leave Earth alone after this? Riller asked. Sivak's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. Perhaps, but if they don't, I doubt humanity will fear them. Riller chuckled softly. They're not what I expected. I thought we'd see a species too reckless for its own good. Instead, we saw something rare, something the galaxy may need more of. Marquez stepped up beside them, her eyes fixed on Earth's distant glow. And what's that? Riller glanced at her, scales catching the light. Hope returned to the Deathworld. As the students boarded their transport ship bound for their home planets, Sivak took one last glance at Earth. In the swirling storms, the jagged mountains, and the wild oceans, he saw not danger, but resilience. He realized then that Earth's greatest strength was not its people's capacity for war, nor their technology. It was their unshakable belief that no challenge was insurmountable as long as they faced it together. That belief, Sivak thought, was the most formidable weapon of all. As the ship slipped into the blackness of space, he silently hoped that the galaxy would never test the full extent of humanity's resolve. For if they did, they might find that Earth's greatest threat was the indomitable spirit of those who refused to fall.